Hey everyone, welcome to the very first episode of the Wheels2Walking podcast. Well, actually, this is like the 42nd episode of the Wheels2Walking podcast, but most of you guys don't know that because it was hidden behind $1 on Patreon.
Such a high barrier.
I know, so much money. A quarter a week.
A quarter a week.
A quarter an
A
episode.
quarter an episode.
Too expensive for a lot of you guys out there. So you know what? Here we are.
So this is not our first rodeo at all.
No way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But you guys think it is.
It might be a shape, but definitely not a form.
I used to say that. In no way, shape, or form are you allowed to write anything on that paper. That is a form.
In no way, shape. Fuck, that's a form.
A shape is a form. Sorry.
That's hilarious. But yeah. So this is the first episode, but not really. We're super comfortable. We're literally like inseparable. We talked about it on episode 0, but we've been podcasting basically in secret for a whole year. So this is really exciting that we're able to come to you guys. And actually, the coolest part of our relationship is that it was founded on podcasting.
Yeah,
like literally, our relationship was started because of podcasting.
I would even go as far to argue that Wheels2Walking was born because of podcasting.
It 100% was.
Specifically that podcast, because it was only after I heard my story back from start to finish that I kind of had a bit of epiphany that I was like, oh, because I'm someone who comes from a background of like drug addiction and like abuse, like the stepdad that used to beat me and like all this crazy stuff where my self-esteem was very low. So I thought I was like, oh, I'm not important. Like I don't matter. Like
I'm broken. I'm damaged goods.
I'm broken. I'm damaged goods. Like I'm just a guy who's paralyzed and then like got addicted to drugs and then tried to kill himself. And then like, I'm no longer doing that anymore. And I'm like back to living a normal life, but like, I'm not interesting. Like no one wants to hear about me. I don't have anything to offer. So I was very much like, no one wants this.
I'm going to put out my message secretly through art.
Yeah, I'm just going to make conceptual weird art and I'm just going to tell my story by the piece of paper that's next to the art? Question mark?
By the form.
By the form. Yeah, and then after I heard my story back, I was like, I see what's going on here.
I got something to say.
Yeah.
I got something to say. I got something to say, you know what I'm saying?
But I didn't have anywhere to say it, and you were the first outlet I had to say it.
Yeah. So I'll share my story. So basically we're gonna get into the origin story of Wheels2Walking
on episode 1, which is actually not episode 1. And if
it
you're
was
on
episode 47. Whoa, that's crazy. No, it's kind of crazy because I was in the 40s. So let's go back. So my name's Andrew Deitch. I have a podcast called the Andrew Deitch Podcast. It's been going strong for about 2.5 years now. I'm kind of putting it on hold right now to basically invest in the Wheels2Walking podcast, throw some freaking gasoline on that. But basically, back in, I think it was 2017.
2017.
Yeah.
September 2017?
September, something like that. That's crazy that I already had 47 episodes by September and I started at the end of May.
Yeah.
So I started the podcast at the end of May 2017 on my birthday. Actually, I launched the podcast, and my goal from my podcast was to eventually create a show kind of like Joe Rogan's show, kind of like Tim Ferriss' show, where it's basically every episode I have a new guest. I bring interesting people on. They get to share their story, how they got to where they are today. And I had a friend named Sheen Dar, shout out Sheen, and she was on my podcast. She was on my podcast, and she was like, yo, I've got this friend from the gym who has a really cool story. You need to have him on your podcast. And that friend was Richard. But normally what I would do when I find a new podcast guest is I stalk them on social media because I'm trying to figure out who the heck they are. And she really didn't give me much information. So I find Richard on Instagram.
Which is lucky because I'd made that Instagram that like a couple of months before when my nephew was in town. And I'd intentionally like made sure I was a ghost online. I didn't want to be seen or heard or found. I wanted no one to know anything about me. I was kind of ashamed of my past and like my life experiences, and I was trying to really be secret as much as possible. And I remember even going through every web browser and searching my name in every search engine, and whatever information I found, like any accounts I had open, I would close them out. Like I spent like a couple of weeks like erasing myself from the internet. And even still this day, if you type in Richard Corbett, you don't find me.
Well, now you do.
Well,
but
a little bit, but if you search Wheels2Walking, you're going to find me more than you're going to find Richard Corbett.
Yeah, it's true. There's like a parliament member in like England named Richard Corbett or something like that.
No affiliation.
Are you sure? I thought he was our sponsor for the podcast.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Richard T.
Thanks,
Corbett.
Parliament guy. The worst ad read of all time. Thanks, Parliament guy.
Thanks, guy.
But yeah, so basically Richard had like nothing about himself. And so on his Instagram, I found out that he was a wheelchair user because there was one video of you throwing an axe, like at one of those axe throwing places.
You know, it's totally the most memorable thing, at least for me, about that video is I was so shredded. I've never been. I've never been that shredded in my entire life. Well, first of all, it was summer in Atlanta. Second of all, that place had no AC and all the doors were shut, so it was hot. It was hot as fuck. And I was like, ooh, I'm gonna take my shirt off because I'm literally melting, and then I hit it a bullseye, and I was so stoked, and that was literally the only hit I had the entire night, and it happened to be caught, and I was like, dude, I'm so shredded right now. I'm not as shredded.
Not currently, not currently, but yeah. So basically, I'm like, okay, wait, so. Is he a wheelchair user? There was like another picture of like the tattoo you had just gotten. And then there was like a picture of you on a boat, but you weren't in a wheelchair. Like it was like, or something like that.
I don't recall.
Maybe it wasn't on a boat, but you were on the lake or something. I don't remember. Basically, it was very nondescript. And I don't even think you had a bio on your Instagram. It was literally like RT Corbett something. And like, that was it. So anyways, I roll up, we ended up texting back and forth, and I'm like, okay, like, where should we do this? Because at the time I was living at my parents' house. I didn't have like a studio to record in. So I would typically go to wherever these people were. And it was actually easier to get guests that way because it's like, yo, I can come to you. They don't have to like put a burden on themselves to like come to me or whatever. And I didn't have to embarrass myself by recording in my parents' living room. So Richard was currently working out of an art studio. Were you working on like a sculpture project kind of thing?
Yeah, I was doing a collaboration with another artist. I had some history in production art, which means I can take a single thing an artist has made and then kind of reverse engineer it to make a bunch of copies of it so that that artist can then sell them at scale.
Yeah.
Instead of just having like one thing they can sell for a couple $1,000s, they've got like 50 things that are the exact same thing.
And you can get your art to more people.
Yes.
So anyways, I show up not having any clue what to expect. I'm like, okay, is this guy going to roll out in his wheelchair? Like, I really had no idea. And Richard kind of like comes like hobbling out. That's the best way to describe it. You didn't even have your crutch, I don't think. Maybe you did.
No, I didn't. I remember because I remember walking, there was a slight decline, and I was like, oh, crap, how am I going to get back up this? And when you opened up the door, I was like, what's up, dude? And I just gave you a hug because I knew you a little bit only from listening to Sheen's episode.
Yeah, so you'd already listened to my podcast.
Yeah, because I wanted to get to know Sheen a little bit more than I knew Sheen, and she was on your podcast, and I was like, ooh, let me just listen to her story.
Yeah.
And that helped me get to know her a little bit better, because
yeah, for sure.
That's how podcasts work.
Yeah, and so basically Richard and I, we hit it off, we started recording, and I didn't know anything about you. Like, I really didn't. And I think just for the audience, anyone who's brand new here, I think getting into that story a little bit would be helpful for them. But you shared this story that you're about to tell for the first time, and obviously if you're curious to listen to the whole interaction, it's episode 47 of the Andrew Deitch podcast. But kind of share with everybody listening right now what you kind of shared with me.
Yeah, sure. So I'll speed it up to,
yeah, of course.
to the money
shot.
Get to
the important parts.
To the money shot, because that's what everyone wants to know.
Exactly.
About 10 years ago, I was out for a run. Here in Atlanta, we've got underground parking decks, and I fell into an underground parking deck. I fell about 50 feet. That ended up breaking both my legs. That smashed up my left elbow into 50 different pieces, split my sternum open, and I was left paralyzed with a spinal cord injury, which led me to be a full-time wheelchair user. And the type of injury I had was what's considered incomplete, which means I have some level of mobility and function below my level of injury, like where it got hit on the spinal column, and the column. And
spinal column and column.
Okay, Eminem, Marshall, and I had a lot of things that kind of prevented me from attempting to walk again. I had a bunch of broken bones and a bunch of wounds that I had gotten from in the hospital and from my accident. I then got a blood clot in my leg, so I was like banned from trying to do physical therapy for like 6 to 9 months. And then it got to a point where I was like, dude, I'm tired of like, I'm just going to get to life and get to living. And I just hopped in the chair and stayed in the chair. And unfortunately, I went down a path of addiction and slow and progressive thing that totally gets you over time. You know, over the next 3 or so years, I slowly got worse and worse and worse and started taking bigger and bigger and bigger doses and, you know, performing bad work and, you know, just kind of living in filth. And it came to the point where I was so messed up that I really like became an animal. I became animalistic, and you know, a crazy story. You know, I've written about it in a series of emails called "The Untold Story." We'll probably have that linked in the show notes,
definitely,
or in the description down below if you're watching this on YouTube. And it ended up me getting completely institutionalized. You know, I was put away in a psych ward, and then my family kind of took legal ownership over me, I guess you would say, and basically was like, "Hey, you can go to rehab or you can go to jail. What do you want to do?" And at that point, I knew what addiction looked like, and I hated it, but I never knew how to get out of it. So I just kind of like had surrendered to it. And well, the only way I thought out was through suicide, and I had attempted to kill myself a few times before. And so eventually I ended up in a dual diagnosis rehab where they focused on mental health and on addiction. And I ended up getting clean, and I'm still clean today. I'm over 5 years clean right now. And in that process, I learned how to manage my pain properly. I learned how to go to therapy and address my demons. I went to a 12-step program and ended up getting a sponsor and working the steps and going to meetings and like just following that recipe for success. And you know, also expanding out my desire to want to get to know myself better and not be such a piece of crap, honestly. And started doing personal development programs, and then, you know, eventually, you know, got back to my career and back to work. And that's about the time that I met you. And I was really ashamed of my past. You know, I didn't want.
Well, who wants to brag about being an addict, you know?
I mean, also like.
Or a wheelchair user even. Like, you're trying to like hide that. It's like, dude, don't look down there. Like, look up here. I'm a cool person. I do other things besides just being a wheelchair user. Because for those of you who don't know, I mean, I'm around Richard all the time. Typically the topic of discussion when you meet someone new, a lot of times it happens to be about the wheelchair because it's like the one defining feature about you.
It's a big defining feature in the same way that like the tall guy with dreads, people are like, "Oh my gosh, you're so tall and like your dreads are so neat." And he's like, "Cool, thanks." And that's like the end of the conversation. There's no mystery behind why he's tall and why he has dreads, but there's a big mystery behind my disability. So, you know,
because anyone could be in a wheelchair for so many reasons. There's over the past
so
year,
many reasons I've learned.
We've learned there's even more than we knew originally.
I'm still learning. I'm like, wait a minute, you need a wheelchair for that? I mean, I guess that makes sense, but like I literally had no idea.
Yeah.
And now that I know, I'm like, oh, I was kind of judgmental. You know? But then it got to the point where, you know, I've always been an artist. I've always been a creative person. And I was working at a studio, which was when I met Andrew, and I was doing production work for this artist. And that project didn't end up working out. And then I branched off and got my own studio space. And then I realized, like, if I'm making art for myself in physical medium form, I didn't like it. I'm really good at making physical medium art for other people, like other artists, but I'm not good at making my own original content, which is kind of unfortunate because I feel like a scam artist, almost like a ripoff. Like I don't have many original projects. I've got one that I did in collaboration, which is the 9/11 memorial, which is here in Atlanta. But you know, like I was just like bored creatively, you know, and then I started filming my life in ways, because like I went through a depression. I still, even though I'm clean, I still deal with depression, and I still take medicine for it and go to therapy for it. And I was going through a depression, and I spent a lot of time watching YouTube, and I really wanted to do YouTube videos. And so I just thought, like, okay, how can I? And I was really inspired by like Casey Neistat and, you know, Ben Brown and Fun for Louie Cole, and I was like, okay, how can I start to share my unique perspective? I mean, Casey used to always talk about that. He's like, you have a unique perspective in life. You need to share it.
And the podcast that you did with me was the first time you'd ever shared it, and you were able to like listen back, and you're like, "Oh,
I got to
shit.
hear it." Yeah, absolutely. Like I knew I
got
had
something to say.
I knew I had something to say, and I then needed to create a place for me to say it. And I had tried to create a bunch of different places that weren't actually online. And then I was like, I got to do it online, you know.
And you also realized, like, when you're laid up in the hospital bed after you get a spinal cord injury, you're sitting there wondering what's going to happen for your future. You probably don't know any other wheelchair users. You've got, this, you don't have a compelling future for yourself anymore because everything that you've ever planned on doing did not involve being a wheelchair user. You don't even, and the portrayal of wheelchair users in the media is typically, old people or like weak, or, there's no quote unquote cool wheelchair users besides like Joe on Family Guy and like Professor X in X-Men or whatever.
Or like Jimmy from Degrassi, but I don't even know if he was cool. And then how about the guy in Glee? Was that guy cool?
I don't know if he was cool or not. Never watched Glee. But I mean, again, like I can't think of any like cool, badass wheelchair users.
But those are also media depiction. Those aren't real life. But they aren't real.
They're not. But that's what I'm saying is like when you're laid up in the hospital bed and you are not familiar with wheelchair users, and that's the only introduction that you have to them, and then you come to find out that the doctors are telling you you're going to be needing to use a wheelchair for the rest of your life. You have all these preconceived notions.
Yeah, I had to go full research mode.
You had to go full research mode, and you wanted to create something for that past version of yourself, right?
Yeah, because I think everyone has research mode. They want to know, can I get a job? Can I get a girlfriend? Can I have fun? Can I hang out with friends? Like can I drive? What does my future look like? And that wasn't there. I remember I found a show. It was like a reality show on TLC.
Push Girls, right?
Yeah, I found it through torrents. It was called Push Girls, and it was only on like 2 seasons, and it was more of a reality show, if anything. There was like 3 paras and a quad, and they just kind of like showed their day-to-day living, sorta. It really wasn't. I didn't learn a bunch, but what I did learn, the videos sucked. They were just like doctors in a lab coat sitting in a quiet room with white walls in the background, speaking in a lot of medical jargon, and I was like, dude, I don't like this.
It doesn't make you stoked to be a wheelchair user.
Yeah, and I did learn a lot of stuff from my physical therapist and occupational therapist, and I went to like a pretty good like rehab facility, and I got involved in team sports and peers, and like I had a pretty good first year. But I didn't set myself up for success because by the time I got to school, back to work, I kind of like rejected all that because I didn't want to be associated with wheelchair people. I kind of thought they were all kind of losers, and I didn't want to have to do anything with them, and I didn't think there was any valuable because I was like, well, before I was a wheelchair user, I didn't want to hang out with disabled people. So now that I'm a wheelchair user, I still don't want to hang out with disabled people. It was kind of like a weird mentality that
I can get that though. I mean, it kind of makes sense.
It's like I didn't want to be a member of like the poor me party. I didn't want to be a part of I didn't want to associate with the stereotypes in my head. They weren't actually those stereotypes, but I had made them that stereotype in my own head. I'd made them these kind of like weak, pathetic, sad losers that like people had to take care of them, and like I wasn't into that. But then after I got back to school, that's kind of like when the drug use started because I was out of school for, a period of time and I needed help catching up. And so I started taking some study drugs. And then I found myself, again, I talk all this in my Untold Story, which will be linked everywhere. I started taking study drugs and then, opiates like, painkillers and stuff like that. And it just it just put me in a bad place. It just put me in a real bad place. And, I sunk deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And I want to, the big motivation behind Wheels2Walking and all of this is for that younger version of myself, someone who didn't know what his future looked like, didn't know how to do anything wheelchair related, didn't have a reason to wake up every day. Someone who I'm trying to prevent people from going down my path. Like, you do not have to get addicted to drugs. Like, you do not have to become early depressed. You do not have to, become suicidal and get institutionalized. Like, you can have a great life. You just don't do what I did. So
Yeah.
I share a lot.
It's a precautionary tale.
It's unfortunately a common story, but I hope that through this podcast and through my videos, it becomes an uncommon story.
Well, the dopest part is that it didn't end in demise. Like, it didn't end in you killing yourself and being like, learn from this guy, don't do what he did. It's like, it ended in triumph. It ended in you being this like awesome public figure that is becoming the face of, cool wheelchair users. I mean, there's plenty of them out there. We've met tons of cool, awesome guys that are doing really cool stuff. I mean, whether they're involved in adaptive sports or whether they're, just really awesome individuals like that are just so happen to be in a wheelchair. It's really cool because you're kind of that first person to be the quote unquote like Casey Neistat or like whatever of wheelchair users. Because surprisingly, no one's done it the right way. And that's where I come into the whole thing. Cause
totally.
I realized that like I was getting really good at video editing. Actually, I just released the final episode of the Andrew Deitch podcast. Dun, dun. And I recorded it tonight actually. And you can go listen to it on my feed, but I kind of in that process kind of talk about my half of this side of the story too and how I developed myself as a video creator. But basically by the time I started working with Richard, I was like getting a lot more comfortable with working with videos and everything, and I was really inspired by the same types of creators that you were. So we just vibed like super well once we started to finally work together, because we could speak the same language as far as what we knew we wanted to create. Like if I was saying, oh, we want it to feel like a Peter McKinnon vlog, or like, oh, this needs to look like kind of like Casey Neistat type feel, or oh, we should try to make a video like this creator. We watch the same YouTubers. We listen to the same kind of music a lot. We're very, very similar in a lot of ways.
Hobbies. I mean, we used to go to Caffeine and Exotics. We used to go to Caffeine and Octane. I remember one time we were on your like living room floor at your house, just like looking at pictures of when you went to Goodwood, right? And later your mom commented like, dude, you would not know that you guys met like a couple months ago. Like,
no, literally people think we're childhood best friends. Yeah. Like there's been articles written that are like, Andrew Deitch, his childhood best friend and also now producer. And it's like,
nah, dude, we met a couple years ago.
2 years ago. But you wouldn't know it.
Yeah, the stars aligned because if he would, I mean, I think about that, like if Jalila would have met me any other time than when she met me, if you would have met me at any other time than when you met me, we would have not clicked. I was not in a place, and that's another good thing is like people love a good comeback story, and one of the things that again Wheels2Walking does for me, because this is kind of cathartic. Like I use Wheels2Walking for myself too, and
totally,
it's not only to help that kid inside of me and to make sure no one else, like screws up or whatever, but it's also to make my suffering worth it, because I suffered for years. I went through hell and back, and it was awful. It was one of the worst things ever. I would never wish it on my worst enemies. Even like the day-to-day stuff I go through right now that I usually keep on the DL because it's not helpful to share, my sufferings and these difficulties that I'm going through, because that just feels like I'm placing a burden on other people. It feels like by kind of be like, oh, I'm going through this shit, and if I tell you about it, then all of a sudden that makes it your shit, and I don't want to do that. But anyway, this was also to make it worth it. Because I now receive messages from people that will make me cry, and it's usually messages of like, I mean, one recently I got, I'll just say, like it was from a sibling who was basically like, hey, my brother was injured 2 years ago. He was going down a really bad path. He was, suicidal, and we were all worried about him. And then he found your videos, and he's completely turned his life around. And no one can think, in the whole family, no one can think of any other thing that changed except for the fact that he started watching your videos. So I just want to say thanks for saving my brother. Because of you, I now have a brother again. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to cry now.
BRB, gonna wipe the tears off my face.
Because like my siblings needed that for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
totally,
like
man.
My sibling, like my mom, my sisters, they were like, dude, he's dead. Like
they're waiting for the call.
For real. I mean,
dude, that's a really sad place, dude. Like I've been friends with a lot of people in recovery as well, and have, some of my brother's friends are struggling with some stuff right now. And it's like really, really fucking sad when literally parents and siblings they're at their wits' end, and they're pretty much just waiting for that call.
Yeah, they've done what I call the pre-grieve. Like they're like, they're already dead, but like let me just wait until they could get the call.
It's rough, man.
Which is an unfortunate reality of recovery. I mean, I've pre-grieved quite a few people, and then when they do die, I'm like, yep, well, I don't think I need to go to their funeral because I'm already over it. You know, I was over it before.
Damn.
It's kind of messed up, but
it's real, dude. It's real.
Yeah, but that's like, you know, Wheels2Walking in a nutshell. I mean, obviously it's so much more than that. And for those of you that are new, or maybe even just found out about us, about the podcast.
Maybe we're on New and Noteworthy.
Oh, you guys, yeah, maybe you did what we asked you to do. But you know, you can kind of go back and you know, even from the beginning, like Wheels2Walking was for newly injured wheelchair users, but kind of recently I've just been saying new wheelchair users because regardless if you've been injured or not, there's a lot of the similar things that we deal with. And then even there's a lot of people that will comment and be like, I'm not in a wheelchair or use a wheelchair or ever even met someone in a wheelchair, but I love watching your videos. They're cool. And
because it gives you a glimpse into a life that you'd never know what it's like.
It's a secret life. You know, it's I think about my life has been pretty much dominated by subcultures. You know, I've never been someone who swam the mainstream. You know, I was homeschooled. I was involved in Eagle Scouts. I got involved in tournament paintball. I was into street racing. I was into the art scene. Like a lot of like secret undergrounds that not a lot of people like have invites to. Like you pretty much have to earn it. And then here I go again, also getting into the secret world of wheelchairs and spinal cord injuries, and then like the secret world of like drug addiction. It's like you can only get into these worlds if through hard-won experience, and I don't think people should have to, you know, experience certain things. Like,
yeah,
like if you can, you know, go to therapy and get involved.
It's not cool to be, you know, to have dealt with that. I mean, it's an interesting story and it gives you character and it makes you appreciate things and it AJ's mic stand keeps going up.
Yeah, I'm trying to adjust it so it can just stay up, but it won't.
We're still working out the kinks over here at Wheels2Walking. but
that's funny because mine is doing the opposite where it keeps like sagging a little,
falling down.
Yeah,
we're still dealing with all of our new equipment here. We'll get it all fixed, but we'll not necessarily fixed, but we'll get it dialed. We'll get it dialed
is episode
in.
1.
It's going to be a little rough around the edges. Speaking of which, this curtain is going to be replaced by something cool in the next couple of episodes, hopefully soon.
Yes.
Supposed to be coming soon. Also, this sign will have some cool like lights behind it and all kinds of stuff. But anyways, not to I completely threw us off track with the sidebar there. But basically, all that to say, it's definitely really cool that we've got this main platform of Wheels2Walking, but this podcast now is going to let us delve into the like mainstream of topics because again, yes, you're involved in this weird subculture of wheelchair users and spinal cord injury and by proxy, I am too, which is kind of funny. Mm-hmm. I know more about wheelchair users and spinal cord injury than I ever thought I would ever want to know in my whole life.
Well, I mean, you don't know unless you know.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, there's a new guy I met at the gym. His name's Jake, and he's actually cool because he's the first person to ask me, not in an ironic way, if I do leg day, because he saw me like walking around. He's like, "Hey man, you do leg day?" And I was like, "No, not really." He's like, "You probably should." He's like, "It's good for you." And I'm like, "Who do you know that's a wheelchair user?" And he's like, "Oh, I worked at the Alabama's adaptive wheelchair basketball team. I worked there for like a lot of my friends are wheelchair users, and like I know what you know that you're clearly incomplete, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I might actually go do a leg day with him sometime because he kind of ironically. So unless you're in one of those situations, you're never like same thing with AJ. Like you probably never thought in your life you'd be in this world.
No, I did not.
AJ's out here trying to be like a film director, and he's like, "I'm hanging out with wheelie boys now. What the heck is going on?"
Yeah, but although wheelchair life is a big part of my life, it's not really. You know, like I've got
it consumes your life, but not really.
I've got so much more about me that I want to talk about. You know, and topics of conversation. It's like things that don't thrive on YouTube. Like I can't throw up a YouTube video that's like my 10 favorite personal development books. That's gonna be weird because people didn't subscribe to my channel to learn that. Although I've got a bunch of personal development books that really helped me out a lot that are super valuable. But
I
felt that way with Casey's videos.
Casey Neistat, he's transcended.
It was mostly daily vlogs, but kind of whenever he puts out anything, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why he'll consistently always have an audience. And I think that's probably what's going to end up happening with us. Not to toot our own horn over here, but like we've got something really cool going on with the Wheels to Walking brand and channel. But I think especially this podcast is just going to be our way to like bump into that mainstream and let people, because we are huge fans of podcasting, dude. Like we listen to podcasts all the time.
All day, every day. I'm listening to podcasts. And, I think about this, like, I talk about this a lot, and this is kind of like a big angle of Wheels to Walking, but also something I'm literally applying to Wheels to Walking is like, you can learn a lot from other people's mistakes. You don't have to make your own mistakes. Mm-hmm. And because we are avid consumers of YouTube, we're kind of like, even though before we were creators, we were interested in creator stuff. We were like in the trenches, and we can kind of like figure out like, oh, don't have an MCN. Like, oh, don't sign a brand deal with a sponsor that you don't fully align with. Like, oh, don't do a collaboration with a particular person who
you're not actually friends with in real life or whatever.
You don't actually like. Like, there's ways, and it's like, oh, okay, ads aren't the only way to make money. You have to diversify your funds. Oh, you want to have a even deeper, hardcore audience? Have a podcast. Like, we've figured this out before we figured it out, and that's kind of like super Wheels to Walking too. It's like, are you laid up in the hospital? Do you not even have a wheelchair yet? Well, here is how to do a wheelie. Here's how to push your wheelchair. Believe it or not, I had a guy message me. Again, I love these messages from all you guys. He was like, hey, thanks to your how to wheelie video, I passed my like wheelie test like the very first time, and the physical therapist didn't believe me when I said it was the first time I was ever in a wheelchair. And he goes,
there's an actual wheelie test with physical therapists?
Yeah, so depending if you go to like an actual nice hospital that has like good physical therapy, like a part of, I think it's maybe technically occupational therapy, wheelchair skills are a thing you have to learn.
Yeah, makes sense.
And because he had watched my videos, he already knew what to do. So
That's
when
so
he
sick.
finally got his own wheelchair, he was like doing stuff already. And the therapist was like, nah, you definitely used to play around in wheelchairs. Like, did you have like a grandpa, or like who had a wheelchair that you knew? And he's like, literally no one. I just watched Richard's videos.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's
well,
like,
I think it's kind of like once you see it, you understand. Like, if the only thing you've ever seen of wheelchair users is people getting pushed around at the airport or Six Flags or old people, you can't picture in your mind what it's like to be a very competent and proficient, skilled wheelchair user who's in a fitted manual wheelchair. Like, you are so proficient in that rigid manual wheelchair that I watch you and it looks like an extension of who you are as a person, as your body. It's a prosthetic. And when I see you in it, it's very fluid. I see the way you navigate the world and maneuver the world. It's like, oh, yeah. And the wheelchair melts away because it's not obstructing you. It's actually empowering you to navigate the real world. And that's what's so cool about you in your wheelchair. Actually, me and Matthew, my brother, we talked about this recently. It's like, sometimes I forget that Richard is like, yeah, it's like, yes, Richard's a wheelchair user. Duh. We know that in our brains, but like, it's also one of those things that we're like, we never view it as an obstruction unless we're going to like do some activity. We're not like thinking about it as like, oh, Richard can't, blah, 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 blah. Like, we're never, it's weird. It really has like melted away.
Well, I'm also,
because you're so multifaceted. It's just, it's a small thing to us now. But in the beginning, it's such a big thing when people meet you because they're like, whoa, wheelchair, that's a big thing.
Yeah, and also think about, because I'm super unique because I have mixed mobility, right?
Totally.
I used to always be in the chair, and that meant that, I was more limited. And now that I'm on my crutch, sometimes I can literally, like, I've never been in my wheelchair in your house except for to shoot that video that one time. I always just like grab my crutch because I'm like, that's a crutch house. I'm going to, but
there's a lot of chairs I can sit down on, and I cannot get inside the house without it.
But it would be one of those things that, like, if I was more of a wheelchair user, when I'd show up, either I wouldn't be coming to hang out at your house a lot, or if I did, I'd be like, hey, can you carry me inside and bring my chair in with me? And you'd be like, yeah, sure. It would be more on the forefront of your mind, obviously.
In those regards, but I think that would even melt away after a while anyways, too. Because it would just become the new normal.
It is the new normal, exactly.
It would just be like, that's just something that Richard needs me to do. It'd almost be like having a short girlfriend. You're always going to be reaching things for her. Yes. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't always think about like, oh, my girlfriend's so short. You're just like, she's short, and that's just who she is, And so, yeah, it's cool that that's just become like, I don't know.
And that was over time through trial and error and through being around other people. But it's like, for the folks that don't have access to adaptive sports, the people that don't have access to good mentors, the people that don't have access to quality hospitals and quality physical therapy and occupational therapy, that are just thrown in a chair and, you know, patted on the butt and sent out the door. They don't have anything. But now they got me. But
again, like, I think, for example, just being able to watch your videos, they can picture in their mind what it looks like to be a cool wheelchair user. For example,
being a model, a power of example. It's a good thing.
Well, because if you handed me a skateboard, but I've never seen a pro skateboarder, I'd be like, oh, that's kind of neat, but I'll probably like fall. But then you watch Tony Hawk and you're like, holy shit, I want to spend hours and hours and hours perfecting and being proficient at this because I want to look as cool as them one day. Or for example, you know, a drone. It's like, that's cool. What am I going to do with it? Take a picture of myself and float it. But once you see what people can do with a drone,
our friend Steele is like that, dude.
Yeah. Once you see the power of the tool, it's like, oh, I thought it was this thing and it's actually this thing. And holy shit, I want to get really good at that. And I think that's kind of what you've been able to do with wheelchairs, you know, because wheelchair users, they're laid up in the hospital and they're like, well, shit, now I've got this thing that's going to freaking limit my life and it's going to be such an obstruction. I'm going to be confined to this wheelchair. People say that, confined, all the time. And bound. It's like wheelchair bound. And it's like, nah, dude, like this makes me be able to have the life that I want. And
like, without this wheelchair, I would be confined to my apartment and I would be bound to my bed. Like literally. I would be 100% dependent on other people.
Because you've talked about it before. It's like walking is your superpower, but you can't activate it all the time. It's like you can't. You could probably walk like the length of a football field and then like probably collapse at the end and be bedridden for the next week.
So not be worth it.
It would be awful and it wouldn't be worth it at all. But
I could push through because I'm a stubborn, intense kind of person. But why though?
Yeah, to prove to who?
Why?
Yeah, why would you do it when you could just roll? And that's the thing with the wheelchair, and that's a really thing. In our last Q&A video that we did on our YouTube channel, you can go back. It was Q&A episode 1. Maybe by the time you're listening to this, we'll have tons of Q&A episodes, or maybe not, because we'll probably be doing a lot of Q&A on this podcast. But it was a topic that we talked about. Is like you don't. Like the wheelchair is an empowerment tool. It's not, and so we shouldn't judge other people based on their usage of it, even if they can walk, because it's like, who cares if they're using it or not? If it makes their life easier, who is anyone to judge why they're using that tool? You know, granted, if they're using, if they're using a handicap placard and getting, parking in the handicap spot when they don't necessarily need to be, then that's an argument that can be made. But it's like, if there's just a guy using a wheelchair, who cares? Who cares why they're using it?
Yeah. I mean, there's some people that I can't say this out loud because it's probably mostly not true, but that are just like lazy and will use it. Like if they're like in the grocery store, they'll just hop in one. Or I saw someone left a comment on one of our TikToks who was like, when me and my family go to Disney, we rent wheelchairs so we can cut in line and none of us actually need it. And it's like,
I saw that too.
Like, that's crap. You're a shit person if you do that. And karma will come and get you. I
almost want to think that was
probably just some dumb
troll on TikTok that just wanted attention, but who either way, maybe it wasn't.
Or maybe he has two very
overweight parents.
Overweight or not, maybe disabled, but maybe have never explicitly said, son, we're disabled and it's hard for us to walk, so we choose to use these wheelchairs. Maybe he just thinks, yo, mom and dad, we rent wheelchairs when we go to Disney. Holla. Maybe he's too young to know. It's TikTok. There's children on there.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, either way, it really doesn't matter. But the thing is we're actually learning a lot more about that world too, because there are a lot of people that hop in the comments and are like, yo, I know you said this in the video, but actually I use a wheelchair because of this reason or whatever. And it's like, oh, I never thought of that. I guess
the internet is a beautiful place, and because you get a conglomerate of people that,
Well, to be fair, the internet is the world, because everyone is now in it. Like it's always so funny when people say, like, oh, the internet did this today. It's like, no, that's people. Like the internet didn't do anything. Like that's just people being people, or people being funny, or people being shitty. Because
it's also little pockets too. Like for example, I think like Twitter, for example, only 2% of Twitter users are responsible for more than 80% of traffic, and 2% of like 30 million is what, like 300,000 people. So like those 300,000 people or maybe 600,000 people are the 80% of the conversation. So you can be like, Twitter's on some crazy shit right now. That might actually make sense. Or you can be like, Reddit is all wild and crazy.
That's true.
But Reddit's more international.
And also, the vast majority of people are consumers and no one's making shit.
Accurate.
I mean, think about podcasts. Everyone's listening to podcasts these days. Apparently,
I've been listening to podcasts for like 12 years now. The first
12 years?
Hell yeah.
Jeez.
My very first podcast I ever got into was called Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. And it was a skeptics podcast, and which is funny because at the time I was pretty religious. And
what were you listening on?
I would download it onto my iTunes and then put it on an iPod and then listen to the iPod.
What kind of iPod?
Ooh, it was one of the bigger ones. It was like a 60 gigabyte
classic?
classic.
Oh, nice.
It was like the 4th generation of the classic or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever that one was. And I used to listen to it at work, and it was Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, and I liked it a lot because they would always just take skeptical approaches to things, and it was radio to me, you know, like,
Yeah.
And I've been listening. I mean, it haven't been consistent. There's been times I've been on and off podcasts, but like I've been listening to podcasts forever.
Well, that was the original meaning of the word podcast because it came from the word iPod, right? It was like a radio show that you could listen to on your iPod
Or on your iTunes or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's where the pod part comes from.
But yeah, the podcast. Yeah. But it was,
because we're not recording this in a pod.
I mean, we might be though.
I don't know. You can't see outside the frame.
You can't see what's going on around here.
AJ's in a pod.
I'm in a pod. Can't see me.
If you guys actually want to see the studio, there's a video about, you guys can take it. It's a tour of my apartment.
Yeah, that's true. You can look at the video. It's called "He Lives Alone," or no, wheelchair accessible cribs or something like that.
Wheelchair accessible apartment or
Tour.
I don't
know.
remember.
Basically,
You'll find it.
You'll see it. It's basically
If you just search for
wheelchair apartment
wheelchair
tour.
apartment, yeah.
You'll be able to find it on YouTube. But it, we show the whole studio, but not in its current form. In its current form, it
Much different.
it's only been in its current form for about 3 hours. Like
Basically.
we literally. So
Got
fun fact,
all of our stuff
if
in,
you
yeah.
don't know already, this was the Andrew Deitch podcast set, and we've basically taken the sign off the wall. Now we've got a Wheels2Walking sign. If you're watching this on the video, you can see it. And we've covered up the Andrew Deitch podcast wall with some curtains that will be replaced by a very cool backdrop in the next coming episodes. I think we mentioned that a second ago, but it's pretty dope how this is all like coming along. But I feel like there was one other like subject we were going to talk about on this
because
episode.
this is our. I got it. I remember. So because this is our mainstream play, we want to talk about why inside of the world of wheelchairs
Yes.
we're controversial.
Yes. I wrote in my notes, "Why are we our Kant?" And I'm like, what did I mean by Kant?
Controversial. Well, it's interesting, right? So almost anyone I ever tell that more than half of my comments are hate comments don't believe me.
Yeah.
They're like, that can't be true.
Because what we're doing is so overly positive.
Yeah. So this is what I've come to kind of figure out. So I have a spinal cord injury.
You figured that out?
Yes. I am a paraplegic, which means that a pair of my limbs are altered. They're not working correctly.
Which would be your legs.
Which for me would be my legs. And I have an incomplete spinal cord injury. And after a lot of hours of working out my legs after I got clean, I've been able to walk again. So I have mixed mobility, which means I have the ability to stand and walk and use my legs sometimes. So what's interesting is the controversy comes because there's not a lot of other wheelchair users like me. And
True.
And that's fine because I've got the perspective of like every kind of wheelchair user, except for like a quadriplegic or someone who was born with some type of
Spina
issue,
bifida
or someone who's got some type of degenerative disease, or someone who's got some of like EDS or POTS or CRPS or any of the other issues and difficulties. But my abilities are more, I think, than most wheelchair users.
True.
And if you have less ability than me, a lot of people claim that I am am being unrealistic or unfair or incorrect, or it's not right, or I'm being a lot of people use the word ableist.
Give us an example. Like, so in one of your videos, what would somebody like pick on or say, like, you're being unfair? Like, what would be something that you would say that they would have an issue with?
Okay, so I think about like why I use a wheelchair if I walk video. Anyone
that was our first like viral video.
Yeah, anyone who is like a paraplegic or a quadriplegic who can't walk, who is also hateful, by the way.
Yeah, they gotta have a little bit of that in them, huh?
Yeah, they pretty much are like, screw you, dude, you're faking it, you're just being lazy, it's not fair. If I could stand and walk, I'd stand and walk. You know, you're just a piece of shit. I think about like whenever I talk about like fitness and working out, they're like, no, it's different for us, and I'm like, no, it's not. They're like, yes, it is, and I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah. Well, they forget that you were a full-time wheelchair user for 6 years.
But there's so many arguments against me, right? They'll like
Pick you apart.
pick me apart to the bone. Where it's like, okay, well, yeah, you were a full-time wheelchair user, but you've been incomplete this whole time, or like you're a lower level injury. This means you got all your abs, so you can actually bend over to pick things up off the ground. I can't bend over to pick things up off the ground. It's like, oh my god, are we trying to play the who's most disabled card over here?
Yeah,
and it's interesting because it's 50-50.
That's not a game that anyone can win. By the way, like you can't win the fucking who's the most disabled contest. There's always going to be someone who has it worse off than you, whether they know it or not, because there's always going to be something that's, that I hate that so much.
We'll dive into this more, but this is also the same thing of like, you're not black enough, you're not gay enough, you're not trans enough, like
you're not queer enough,
you're not queer enough. It's like, what does that even mean? It's like there's always this argument.
Everyone's just trying to like one up each other. Brian Regan has a bit about it. He talks about you can't go into a party telling a one wisdom tooth story. He's like, oh, I got one wisdom tooth. Oh, I got two wisdom teeth. I got four. I had impacted. I had tusks coming out of my and they were coming in upside down. Like someone's always gonna have, because if you're just telling a one wisdom tooth story, everyone's gonna have a story better than that one.
Yeah, but
everyone's trying to one up you.
I think the people that appreciate the most are the people that understand what I'm mostly preaching is mindset, which a lot of the stuff I'm talking about is all about like your perspectives and your attitudes and your adaptability and your persistence and the direction of things you want to go. And it's like, I can speak to this because, as I briefly mentioned before, I did all the wrong things first. That ended up with me almost killing myself and being locked away in an institution. Like, I did all the wrong things first. So therefore I know all the things not to do. And then I had to learn how to do the opposite of what I did before. And how I did that was by whatever my first instinct was, whatever my first reaction was, I'm like, okay, do the opposite. Doesn't feel right, but I know that my first reaction is always wrong. And then so now I've got this like level of expertise where it's like, it's the same way that like there's these guys out there that's like, that they're like these like 6-figure entrepreneurs, but they're a 6-figure entrepreneur because they got an inheritance from their dad, Yeah. And it's like, no one wants to listen to you. Like, yeah, you're skilled, congratulations, but like you got that inherited from you. But then there's the people that are like, oh, I was, like I think about like Mark Cuban or like Elon Musk or even like Gary Vee. It's like, oh, I was sleeping on the floor, or like I like didn't have a house, or like,
because everyone loves a good comeback story of like something or nothing to something. You know?
or a series of failures that lead to a success. And a lot of my I have got so much empathy for everyone who hates on me, because I was literally that person.
Yeah.
Like, I was that person who was like, man, fuck that guy, dude. He's just, no way. No one could ever be like him. I can't be like that. Like,
because you're making excuses. But the other thing that people don't realize is there's so many invisible things that you deal with that are way more visible to you than just the walking thing. Like, you've got bowel and bladder issues, you've got pain issues, you've got
skin integrity,
depression issues, skin issues. You're on all kinds of meds you don't want to be on. There's so many things more than just like, Oh, that's kind of inconvenient. He has to be in a wheelchair most of the time, but if he needs to, he can get up and walk. It's like, that's like the least of your worries. And you've told me before you would trade the walking and the legs for all that other stuff to be gone.
Yeah. If I had to be on no medicine, if I didn't have to do any skin checks, if I didn't have a bowel program, a bladder program, if I could perform sexually, naturally, I mean, I can perform sexually, but like with drugs, like chemicals, chop my legs off. I don't need these. Get them out of here, because like at that point, it's like, cool, because just like you imagine an iceberg underwater, it's like the top, which is the most visible, is like
that's your legs,
inability to walk, and that's all that people see. But underneath it, it's like skin breakdown, digestive problems, temperature control, blood pressure issues, spasms, skin integrity, bowel problems, bladder problems, like mental health,
and then also perception by the public, all this mental stuff that goes on. I think we've talked about it before, like some of the biggest struggles of wheelchair users has nothing to do with the legs. It's all mindset stuff, because you get treated differently and you perceive yourself differently and you put limits on yourself and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And that's some of the stuff that I think is going to be really cool. Again, I'm going to pimp out this podcast so much, is like, you listeners are now going to be able to hear my perspective as a person with a disability, and that one snuck out on me. That was a sneaky boy. As a person with a disability with mixed mobility, who at one point had no mobility, and someone who is an able-bodied person who's never had to deal with this stuff before. Also, you get to hear about, basically, so Andrew and I are in similar places in our lives, but we arrived at this destination for two different reasons. I ended up here because I did all the wrong things and went through hell and back throughout my entire life. I think about like my first very big impactful trauma I went through, I was probably 8, and every couple of years there was always been like big stuff that's always happened to me, and my worldview was modeled and how I approach things and how I lived life and yada yada yada. And then it wasn't until I was like 25 or 26.
Are you saying you did all the wrong things and I did all the right things?
I don't know. I don't know about all the right things, but
no, but it was funny because you're like, I arrived at this point by doing all the wrong things, and I'm like, did I arrive at doing all the right things? I don't think so.
Well, I mean, you've said that before. You're like, I'm pretty blessed.
No,
I'm
true.
pretty fortunate that I've had like a good life.
It's so true, man. And like sometimes I can be like, it doesn't ever like make me feel guilty, but it's like, it's like, I can't complain that much. Like, dude, like I've had a good life. I had good parents that are still together that love me. I had a good upbringing. We weren't ever poor, but we weren't ever rich. Like there wasn't anything I could like reasonably complain about that wasn't just bitching about nothing,
And it's funny because now,
and also like, I dropped out of college. I made that decision. That was like the hardest decision. That's kind of crazy. That doesn't seem that crazy, but at the time that was like a crazy thing for me to do, to drop out of college, because it was the first time I was going against like what my parents wanted for me and all that kind of stuff, and what society wants for you. And now that I'm 25, so I'm not super old, but also I'm past that point of like, when people approach me or new people, they're not like, oh, so where are you in school? That period of time was always weird, because when you're at that like college age, people just expect you're in college, and then you're like have to like explain to some old guy why you're like not in college. Like that's
I get that a lot.
AJ, yeah. Well, you at least went to film school.
Well, I won't say it was film school. It was like a film program.
Okay, well.
And then when I finished that,
but it wasn't a 4-year program. It was like 2 years.
It was 1 year.
Oh, it was 1 year. But either way, like at least you've kind of got something. Mine was like, I went to GCSU for a year, and then it was like, peace out. I'm gonna go try to do this like pyramid scheme thing.
I got a GED and failed out 3 times.
Yeah,
3 times.
But I think the coolest thing, really like,
dropped out, failed out, stopped going. That's the funny thing about college. People are like, yeah, I dropped out. I flunked out. It's like, that doesn't happen. You just don't enroll.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you just don't sign up for classes, and then that, I guess, technically means no college is like, you can't come here anymore. You're flunked out. Or like, there's no like,
because you're still giving them money.
Yeah, you don't like go to the admissions.
Maybe like a really, really like I think you probably like fail out of Georgia Tech or something.
Yeah, you don't go to the admissions office and you're like, I would like to officially sign my dropout papers.
Yeah, exactly. You just don't re-enroll.
Yeah,
and that's what happened with me. But I think in the beginning there was a lot of like stigma that I wanted to like, I don't know. Sometimes I just didn't want to get into it, man. Like, you're talking to like your parents' friends.
Bro,
like,
that's how I feel about my wheelchair, dude.
Oh, of course. I'm sure.
It's like, here we go. Yo, I don't.
But now at least you've got a cool project to talk about. You can talk about Wheels2Walking.
Mm-hmm.
But like, there's plenty of people out there that are just like, God damn it, not again.
Exactly.
Because, dude, that's totally
Some
how
people
I felt.
isolate themselves and don't want to meet new people because they know the topic of conversation is going to be wheelchair and disability. And a lot of people have really crazy traumas attached to their disability.
And to add on to just like an average amount of social anxiety, that's crippling, dude. Like, even if you have just like a little bit of social anxiety, you know, like just going out and you're like, I don't want to fucking talk to anybody, but add on to it the fact that you've got this thing that's like everyone's staring. It's not cool.
I mean, I think about when I was going through some of my depths, I used to like grocery shop at night only because I knew and go through the self-checkout because I wanted to make sure that no one would bother me ever.
Well, I knew when you first wanted to start working out, you went to the gym in your apartment at like midnight so no one would be there.
Super late, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I 100% get that, bro. I
just wanted to be left alone. I just wanted people to stop talking to me because of my disability, because I was different.
And there's always some dingus that's like, hey, man. And you're just like, not today, Karen. Like, you're just like, fuck off.
Yeah. Hey, man, what happened to you? Well, damn, you can buy me coffee first.
Yeah.
Be like, I got a name.
You know that South Park episode where he's like, Mom, can you get me the iPad? And she's like, oh, I'll get you the iPad. It's like the meme of like, we have food at home. And she's like, oh, I bought you this iPad. And he's like, Mom, what the fuck is this? It's a Toshiba handybook. This isn't an iPad. And then he's like, hey, man, can you buy me dinner? Can you at least, can you buy me dinner? Because I like to get wined and dined before I get fucked, Mom. Before I get fucked.
That's Cartman.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, but it's interesting because I don't see myself. I take that back. I do have controversial opinions about things.
True.
Like here, I'll just throw a few on the table. I think a lot of people after injury waste too much time and too much money trying to walk again.
Says the guy who can walk. Fuck you.
Exactly. But let's not forget, I didn't walk for the first 6 years, you know?
But I'm going to avoid that topic because I want to be offended.
Right, exactly. But it's one of those things where I'm like, I think you need to get your life back. And in order to get your life back, that does not require you to get your walk back. But a lot of people think, oh, my life took a way weird left turn, and the only way I can correct this weird turn is by getting my walk back. And then they'll spend 6 months, a year, 18 months, 2 years, and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then they don't get very far because obviously, you know, and they'll get into like, you know, stem cells. I think that's a waste of money. I think that's just a lie. That's a big scam. You know, I think neuro recovery gyms are a big scam. Like there's stuff that you can learn on your own. Like I'm all about, you know, like, okay, I'm pro steroids. There you go. I said it. You know why? Because we know those things work. We know that they regrow muscle. The end. There's no argument about that. So it's like people will be like, no. Like steroids are dangerous. And I'm like, but you know what else is dangerous is like not being able to walk. You know, like having incorrect hormone levels,
it's like,
not being able to walk. You know,
we don't know the long-term effects of steroids. Blah blah blah. It's like, you ever thought about the long-term effects of falling 50 feet and smashing up your spinal cord? I got a lot more probs than that.
Absolutely, and it's like steroids can also help with osteoporosis problems and bone density problems, and you can help with your joints. And growth hormone can help with your skin integrity and your sleep problems. And like, there's so much stuff out there. I'm like, your dollar per value, like you can like spend your money. You know, I also like, I don't know, man. That's just that's just one. That's just
I'm sure
one
we're
example.
gonna dive into so many of your controversies.
We're gonna dive into so much stuff, and I have a lot of opinions. Here's my thing. I have a rule. I'm not allowed to have an opinion on something unless I have an experience in it. That's just a rule I have. Very rarely will you hear me say, I don't know, because the truth is I do know. Like I have lived a very unique life that has allowed me to have a lot of really weird, unique experiences where I know a lot about a lot because I've gone through it personally. And a lot of people I don't think understand that, because I will speak on something that I have direct experience about, but they don't know I have direct experience about it. They just think I'm just some guy talking about it. And they're like, shut up, you don't know anything about that. And I was like, yeah, I do, but I hate the fact that I have to qualify myself every time I talk about something.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting, but if I don't know something, I'll legit be like, I don't know that. I can't argue on that. What does that even mean? Tell me what that means. Explain to me like I'm 5. You've heard me say that to people before.
Yeah, you actually talked about that on episode 47 of my podcast. That sounded like the fucking nerdiest thing I've ever said in my life. That actually is exactly what you said on episode 47 of the Internet podcast if you reference it back to the...
According to facts and data.
According to the facts and data, you actually said that on April 14th.
Push the glasses back.
But no, seriously, that's one of the things I think you said on episode 47 is like, you know, you talk about like explain it like I'm 5 because there's a lot of things that you aren't afraid to admit that you didn't know, especially because like the homeschooling thing, there was just a lot of stuff you didn't learn traditionally because you weren't schooled traditionally. So there's a lot of things that like quote unquote everybody knows, but like didn't know.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I found that I still don't need to know because most of the stuff you learn in school isn't applicable to real life.
Yeah. All right, well, let's wrap this episode up. This has been an epic episode 1. Just to pull back the curtain a little bit, we're probably going to record another episode right after this, right?
Yeah, but we're probably going to change shirts to try to be sneaky.
Yeah, so if you listen to the end of this, you'll know the secrets, but people that just jumped to episode 2 won't know, so don't tell them. But hey,
we're trying not to this particular. So the previous podcast, we'd batch all the time. We'd spit out 3 or 4 episodes in a day and then just sit on it for a month. But I think this one, we're intentionally not trying to batch just so we can keep things current.
Yeah, but we're trying to do this big launch, which leads me in my next point, which is to help us. We're trying to get on New and Noteworthy.
If you listened all the way to the end, you're already a fan. Thank you for listening all the way to an end. Please do us a favor.
Yeah, so seriously, we're really, we're launching this podcast, and we're calling it a launch. We're doing a batch of about like 5 episodes, so at the beginning, we can get boosted to hopefully the New and Noteworthy section of Apple Podcasts. That is a really big way for us to get exposure and relevance in the podcast world. We're trying to branch out and get our message out to as many people as possible. So if you like what we stand for, you like what we're doing, number 1, you're already listening to this. So that's step 1. You've already, you're freaking amazing. You've probably subscribed somewhere, at least on, YouTube or Apple Podcasts, whatever, but Apple Podcasts, if you can please go subscribe and listen there. Download and listen to all of our episodes. And then the last thing that's really important for us is reviews and ratings. So there's 2 different things you can do. You can rate the podcast and you can just put a 5-star rating or whatever. That's cool. But the thing that really helps us is when you write a review. And it can be really quick. It can just be like 1 sentence. Just leave it in. You can leave us a 5-star rating and just say like, yo, I love Andrew and Richard. Can't wait for more episodes. That's literally all we're asking for. We don't need very much, but that's one of the biggest metrics. So subscribe on Apple Podcasts, download and listen to all of our episodes, and then leave us a rating and review. We're trying to, they measure that in batches of like 24 hours. So the day that you're listening to this, like I know, like Richard said it on the last episode, but like I know this year's probably thinking like, everyone else will do it. That's what everyone thinks. And so the number of listeners to the number of actual ratings and reviews is always such a huge disparity because everyone's like, they got enough listeners. Someone else will do it. Please, like you, I'm talking to you in your car, at the gym, listening to this while you're cooking, cleaning, in the fucking hospital. I don't know where the fuck you are. Wherever you're listening to this, go over to Apple Podcasts, leave us a review, leave us a rating, subscribe there. That would mean the freaking world to us. And if we get on New and Noteworthy, we're going to do something special for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And before we close out this episode, I just want to say a quick hi to Fred and Andre. You guys have been listening like OGs.
OGs in a game.
Well, I know you're OGs because you're the guys that not only will like comment to me or like DM me or like we always continue the conversation. Like, thanks for being such awesome listeners, and we're really excited you're here. And
now we're excited to get even more of those types of peeps.
Yeah, like for real.
For real.
It's going to be awesome.
It's exciting.
All right, guys. So thanks for listening. And please, before you listen to the next episode, because you're definitely going to do that because this is a really interesting podcast, rate us, review us.
Boom.
Thanks.
See you later, guys.
Adios.